The Splatter Texture Bundle includes 3 products. We have a 6x6 stamp set. It's actually more about a 5.5 by 5.5. And you've got a nice kind of a really filled in gradient coming down. I'll show you some examples of that being stamped. On the 6x8 stamp set, it's actually broken up into separate stamps. It's a little hard to see in the product image over at the Concord and Ninth shop because it doesn't show how each stamp is separated, but I wanted to have it in segments. So if you wanted to just stamp a little bit of a little splatter texture on your cards, you definitely could. And I really wanted this large kind of border one so that you could have a gradient coming in from the edge of something. They're really fun to work with. I will point out which ones I use in the card examples in just a moment. And then lastly, I have a 6x9 stencil pack. It has 2 stencils. And you can see on the back here that one is very, very airy. It doesn't have a lot of splatter, while the other one has a lot of texture. So I did this on purpose so that you can really get a different look. Now, if you want to use this stencil once, rotate it 180 degrees and use it again, you'll get more compact splatter. Or you can use this one down here that has some larger bits and pieces. They're really fun to work with. So let's look at some cards that I made using these 3 products. And practically every single card I made for the July release used something from this bundle. I think there's only a few that I did not put splatter on. So let's just take a look at all of the cards. So first off, we have this one. I used the more airy stencil, and when I stenciled it onto the card front itself, I just omitted the area where I'd already stamped the egg and the grading. And then I just ink blended from the edge. It makes it look a little bit more cohesive. I used the more dense Splatter Texture Stencil for this area down here at the bottom on this Breakfast Buddies card. For this one, you can tell I was really feeling the pebble color in this release. For this one, I did the texture background using the more dense stencil. I added that on top when I was doing the background color on the daisies. So I first stenciled the background, and then before I removed the stencil from my project, I put the splatter texture on top, and then I get that double look. And I just had it kind of fade up, as you know, fade away as I moved up the daisy image. Here are some examples of that background stamp. I actually had, probably about that much of the background stamp hanging off the edge of the bottom of the card. So, because I really wanted it to only have the darker area at the bottom of the card, but you can see how that tone-on-tone effect looks great. I just did Plumberry ink on Plumberry cardstock and Midnight ink on Midnight cardstock. For this card, I used a little bit of gold embossing paste. Let's look at that a little closer. So you can kind of see the dimension and the texture on that. I used the more kind of sparse splatter texture to add that on top. For this card, I used the more dense splatter texture, and I actually just used white pigment ink over the top, and that just really gave it almost like a bokeh look on top of this scene. I have a couple of cards here where I used that border stamp from the 6x8 stamp set. And all I did was just stamp each edge with the border stamp, and it gives it a really nice look going all the way around. So on this one, I used powder cardstock with Harbor ink. And over here, this is Juniper cardstock with Midnight ink. All right, and then this actually uses one of the large stamps from the 6x8 stamp set. Let me grab this right here. It's this large stamp right here. It's just about the perfect width for an A2 card. You can see how it kind of goes right there. And then all I did was stamp it on one end and then rotated the card and stamped it on the other end. And you almost get like the perfect little splatters. I think it kind of looks like a night sky or a galaxy. Looks really, really neat when you kind of rotate it and stamp from both directions on this one. So that's the Splatter Texture Bundle. I think there's a lot of different things you can do with it. I think it would look great, with a little bit of that texture stamped on die-cut letters, or coming out from behind a die cut, or even a little greeting, I think it would be really fun to even have some of that splatter coming out from behind the berries here. Lots of different ways to use the Splatter Texture Bundle.